Every year, hundreds, if not thousands, of evidence of encounters with inexplicable and paranormal phenomena are recorded in the world. And, oddly enough, many of them take place in the same places, which we used to call haunted. In this video, Top F will talk about 5 of the scariest haunted houses. And before we start, support my channel with your like and subscription. Also, turn on notifications to catch all the new releases. Get ready to be scared, we start. Monte Cristo Homestead. Monte Cristo literally means Mountain of Christ, but the names and intentions can be deceiving. Victorian mansion, built in 1884, sits high on a hill overlooking the New South Wales town of Junee in Australia. The estate was the financial and social center of Christopher William Crawley's empire. Monte Cristo's high elevation and the religious name are contrasted with several untimely deaths, accidents, and cruelty that caused trouble for the estate and led to innumerable stories of tormented spirits that still roam the home and estate grounds. Crawley purchased 2 parcels of land totaling 520 acres in January 1876 under the terms of the Australian Robertson Act of 1861. He tried to work his land and somehow managed to survive. A little later he got lucky. The Great Southern Railway was being laid, and Crawley built a railway hotel across the street from what soon became a busy railway station. With the construction of the railway, Crawley had more opportunities to trade his agricultural products, and the hotel business began to improve with an influx of travelers. The tiny village grew, and Crawley, growing rich, bought more land. He grew rich further and in 1883 became one of the founders of the city. In 1876, Crawley built a small brick cottage for his family, which is still owned by Monte Cristo as the original estate. Just 9 years later, the cottage no longer fit Crawley's social status. A new, larger building was needed. In 1884, a new mansion was built from high-quality materials. The old manor became a servant's house. For the award-winning horses, the Crawleys added a stable and built a dairy farm along with other buildings on the estate. In 1898, Mr. Crawley sold one of his estates, the Junee Loftus Hotel, for the huge sum of £10,000 to Mrs. O'Donnell. Distrustful of banknotes, Crawley insisted that payment be made in gold sovereigns. The gold was brought in a big sack and Mr. Crawley counted the coins to make sure he hadn't been cheated before handing over the ownership of the hotel. It is not known where the sovereigns went. Many believe that the gold was hidden in the house or buried in the estate. This part of the legend will cause problems for Monte Cristo in the future. The first official death at the Monte Cristo estate occurred when one of the Crawley maids was carrying their baby daughter. The maid said that some invisible force had pushed the child out of her arms. The child tumbled down the main staircase of the house and died of bruises. Mr. Crawley died at Monte Cristo on December 14, 1910, at the age of 69. He developed a carbuncle on his neck. The infection worsened due to starched shirt collars, and blood poisoning occurred, which caused heart failure. Mrs. Elizabeth Lydia Crawley became so distraught at the death of her husband that she became reclusive. Mrs. Crawley, who lived long after her husband's death, was rumored to be a lot of cruelty. In addition, the inhabitants of the city did not respect Elizabeth, who was left without a husband. To some extent because of racism, Elizabeth's partial Aboriginal ancestry gave some locals reason to look down on her mixed heritage. She converted one of the storage rooms upstairs into a chapel where she immersed herself in Bible reading. Elizabeth did not dare to go out from Monte Cristo during the last 23 years of her life, which ended on August 12, 1933, due to a ruptured appendix. Reginald Ryan has been the owner of Monte Cristo since 1963 and an expert on the history of the house. He talked about the brutality at Monte Cristo. There was a girl who was pushed off the balcony, although it was determined that it was an accident. She was a servant and was expecting a child at the time. She died. One of the young people who worked and lived here one morning did not go to work, but his owner ordered, "Go to work." The young man replied that he was sick. The owner thought that he was pretending and set fire to a straw mattress, so the young man did not have time to get out and burned down. The housekeeper's son, Harold Steele, was mentally handicapped, so he was put in chains for 49 years. The story of Harold Steele is perhaps the most heartbreaking tragedy in Monte Cristo. At the estate's dairy farm, poor Harold was chained to the wall like an animal. There, near the door, you can still see the hole in the wall, worn by his chain. After Mrs. Crawley's death, Harold's mother assumed the role of housekeeper, and she and her son were the only permanent residents of Monte Cristo. Unfortunately, Mrs. Steele died of a heart attack in the main house, and it was not until a few days later that the town noticed her absence. When the police eventually investigated, they found Harold curled up like an embryo and lying in his feces. His body was dehydrated, he was practically dying of hunger, and he missed his mother terribly. Harold was sent to Kenmore, a home for the mentally ill, where he died a few months later. After Mrs. Steele's death, the condition of the house continued to deteriorate because no one cared for it. The last member of the Crowley family who lived in the mansion left in 1948. Only housekeeper Jack Simpson remained at Monte Cristo. In 1961, Hitchcock's action movie Psycho was shown in Juni. After a local man saw the film 3 times and liked the idea, he crept up to Monte Cristo, shot and killed an unsuspecting Jack Simpson. Today, you can still see "Died Jack Haha" scrawled on the door of a dairy farm, either by the killer or by some local with a sick sense of humor. In the next 2 years, the house was completely open to vandals and robbers who were looking for Crawley's gold sovereigns and vandalized the building. The house attracted the native Wagga Wagga, Reginald Ryan. In 1963, he and his wife Olive bought the estate for £1,000. Not a single whole window remained in the house, electrical wiring was not carried out, and vandals destroyed all the rooms. But the Ryan family dreamed of putting everything in order and doing business in antiques. The first time they saw a ghost was 3 days after moving into the house. Ryan said, "In the evening we went to the city center to buy food, and when we arrived back, there was light streaming from all the doorways and windows. Do you know how light flows in fog? That was the kind of light. My wife was next to me, so it was not a hallucination. We stopped the car and looked at the house. My wife didn't want to go there. But as we got closer to the house, all the lights went out." According to Ryan, Monte Cristo is haunted by at least 10 ghosts. Some psychics who visited the house in the late 1990s for an Australian TV show believed that the woman who was killed in the house was one of those 10 ghosts. Although no information about the murdered woman was found, perhaps, if anything happened, the Crawley family was held in such high regard that it was likely that the local police did not put up a strong interrogation. Matt Bowden of the Australian Ghostbusters Society, AGS, lives in Canberra, Australia. The first time he came to Monte Cristo in search of ghosts was in 2001, when he took a tour of Reg Ryan. He told me about one particular incident in the mansion. "I felt several cold places, especially in the room called the drawing room, where the mistress of the house, Mrs. Crawley, used to sit and sew. I felt cold in the corner of that room. Then there was a psychic on our tour who told me that Mrs. Crawley was sitting in a chair not far from me. I did not see her, did not even feel her presence, but I felt the cold in that place. I had a digital thermometer with me, part of my ghost-chasing equipment, and it showed the drop in temperature." Bowden recalled that although the Monte Cristo estate had a terrible past, which he was well aware of before he entered the estate, now the house is quite warm and hospitable. In 2003, Bowden returned for a week at Monte Cristo with 7 of his AGS colleagues. During the study of the group, one of the mentally sensitive women felt short of breath in the boys' room, which was located upstairs. Other psychics and mediums also spoke of the heavy pressure on them in that room. The psychic from AGS was forced to leave the room after a short stay due to pressure on her chest. In the sitting room upstairs, AGS held a seance in an attempt to contact the spirits of Monte Cristo. Bowden said, "I used to do sessions as a kid, but this one seemed pretty worth it. The Ouija tablet was going crazy, she pointed in all directions. We contacted a guy named James. He wasn't housebound, I don't think so, but he was there while we were doing the session. We asked if we could take a picture of him, and he replied that he was standing by the fireplace. So I took a picture. When I took the photo, there was a strange swirling bright light in the right corner of the photo. I'm not a photography expert, but to me, this light is like something captured on film. Something is going on in the house. Today, Monte Cristo is a well-maintained home that houses priceless antiques collected over the years by Reg Ryan and restored to their original splendor. If the setting isn't enough to remind visitors of how the city's richest family must have lived 100 years ago, Mr. and Mrs. Crawley can appear in sophisticated Victorian-era attire and you can see them for yourself. Just hope they don't take you for a servant. The Rectory in Borley. The Rectory in Borley is an old mansion located in the village of Borley, Essex, in the UK. The building was built in 1863 by the priest Henry Bull for his family. Residents warned the priest that the place he had chosen for the construction of the mansion was far from the best. Next to him, they often saw the ghost of a young woman with a pale, sickly face and black clothes to the floor, and they tried to bypass that place. According to rumors, on the site of the construction of the mansion, in the 14th century, Benedictine and convents were located close to each other. One day, one of the monks fell in love with a nun named Maria and managed to persuade her to run away with him. But the plan was not destined to come true because of the denunciation, as a result of which the plot to escape was revealed, and the fugitives were captured next to the horse-drawn cart. The lovers were severely punished, the monk was hanged almost immediately, and Mary was walled up alive in one of the stone walls of the monastery. After some time, in the park near him, they began to notice a girl in gray clothes, slowly strolling along one of the park alleys, later called the Nun's Alley. At the beginning of the 18th century, the monastery was destroyed, but the ghost of a nun continued to appear regularly. The Bull family did not differ in superstition and did not believe the stories of their neighbors, but they felt oddities in the new house almost immediately after moving in. At night, steps and strange sounds were heard, the voices of strangers, singing accompanied by the organ playing, and a man without a head walked along the corridors. In the courtyard, a translucent wagon could be seen from time to time. Sometimes children woke up from the presence in their room of some strangers, whose appearance was strange and unusual. In the dining room, it was decided to block the window with bricks, because the nun often looked into it, frightening those who were eating. The attendants in the Bull's house did not linger, and outsiders, who had heard about what was happening, tried never to enter it. Despite all this, in some surprising way, the Bulls got used to the atmosphere in the house and got along with the ghosts under one roof. The father of the family even built a summer house next to Nun's Alley, wanting to get a better look at the ghost. After the death of the parish priest, after almost 30 years of living in a haunted house, his son Harry Bull continued his father's work, becoming a local priest. He died, like his father, in the Blue Room of the mansion, and subsequent residents claimed that the Blue Room was characterized by increased anomalous activity. Witnesses claimed that they saw the ghost of Harry Bull, dressed in clothes, at a funeral. The house was empty for about a year until the Young Smith family moved in. At first, the Young did not understand why the house had been empty for so long, but the inexplicable phenomena occurring in the house put everything in its place. The ghosts of the house did not hide their presence at all, but harmed and frightened the new tenants. The Smiths did not live even a year in the house, and after them, Harry Bull's cousin and his young wife became the inhabitants of Borley Rectory. They lived in the house for 5 years, and the ghosts mocked them. Bells rang, keys disappeared, things fell, and various sounds, steps, and screams were heard. Spouses lying in bed were doused with water. Ghosts appeared in turn, and one of them was Henry Bull. One day, the mistress of the house found an envelope with a note addressed to her. The message contained one single word: leave. They soon left the mansion. Borley Rectory has been examined for paranormality more than once, and everyone managed to feel the strange features of this house. During the study of incomprehensible phenomena, it was possible to establish contact with the spirit of the nun Maria, and he warned that the house would soon burn down. And so it happened. Even the absence of a house does not prevent the appearance of phantoms next to him. And now some of the inhabitants of the mansion can be met, which often happens. Borley Rectory, as well as the surrounding area, is recognized as a place densely populated by various phantoms. The end of the part 1. Thanks for watching this video to the end. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications to be the first to see the second part of the video about the scariest haunted houses in the world. Bye.